Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 61 of Own the Road with AutoTrader, where we make car stuff simple for Canadians. My name is Jodi Lai, and I'm the Editor-in-Chief of AutoTrader.
And my name is Dan Ilika, and I am AutoTrader's road test editor.
I also think you're an award-winning friend, or you should be.
Wow, thanks, Joe.
If there were awards given for being a great road test editor and a great friend, you would win.
Wow. Guys, the reason I thought of this topic for this episode is to help answer, we do get this every once in a while, and it was actually somebody commented on a video that you did of I think it was the one of the top 5 compact crossovers to buy.
Right.
And you had said, that our experts picked, and somebody had commented like, well, who are these experts anyways? But I also thought, okay, this episode's going to air in August. So that means we're kind of closing in on our awards for 2025.
Right.
So I just thought it would be a good way to kind of kick things off early, plant this seed, a handful of episodes before we get into our award winners of kind of what makes an award-winning vehicle.
Yeah, so every year we do the AutoTrader Awards. Basically, 20 plus professional automotive journalists from all over the country look at every single car that is available for Canadians to buy right now new, and we vote on the best ones. And so it's really like a democratic process. Sometimes I don't love the ones that win, but that's the whole point of all of us voting together. It's like collectively, this is what we've picked.
Yeah.
And the whole reason we do this is to make things easier for you guys, because we know that there's so many options out there, and it can be so overwhelming when you're shopping for a new car to help narrow down the options.
Yeah.
And so that's the whole reason we put on the AutoTrader Awards. But we take this job so seriously. When Dan and I sit down and debate what makes an award-winning vehicle, this is almost the most important thing we work on all year, right?
Yeah. So kind of the very base level of what makes an award-winning vehicle, it has to come from the kind of total pool of vehicles. Like Jodi mentioned, we don't just consider new or refreshed models, which does make the process, a little more complicated.
A lot more complicated. We're looking at 350 plus cars.
But that's so, because to me, and this is how I felt, before my time at AutoTrader, when I look at these awards, and I'm not here to throw shade at other awards programs, it's just to give you guys that perspective. When I see awards programs that only consider new or what they like to call, significantly updated vehicles, how does that help a consumer? Because to me, use me as an example, right? I am sort of around the corner from purchasing a new vehicle, and that's fine. It's just the time has come. And as I'm looking, I'm not just going, what's new or refreshed? I'm looking at everything that's out there, because there are good cars that exist on the market that aren't brand new.
Yeah, and just because something is new doesn't mean it's the best.
Exactly. And the top of my short list right now is the Subaru Forester Wilderness. And I bring this up only because, yes, there is a new Subaru Forester for 2025. The Wilderness is a carryover. Subaru is going to continue building the old body style just for the Wilderness trim, alongside the redesigned whatever generation it is now. I can't remember, 8th gen or whatever. Right. That doesn't make the Forester Wilderness a less good vehicle. It's just that's the decision that was made for whatever reason. And so I'm still considering that. I'm not going, well, it's not new, so it's not for me. And I think that the average car buyer is in the same boat. The Subaru Outback is a good example. Mm-hmm. Subaru Outback won again last year, its category. That wasn't new or refreshed last year, because, just because something is new doesn't necessarily mean it is the best in the segment.
Yeah, and we like you to know what all of your options are, right? So we just thought this was the most fair and comprehensive way to do an awards. Yeah. And it's the most helpful, I think, to do it this way. Yeah. truly for a car shopper, right?
But anyway, that's just what we want to kind of kick off with is that is the prerequisite, is that it has to be from the total market, not just the new and updated models. Then we get into the kind of, the different factors that we really look at, and we, make sure. I mean, a lot of our contributors have been doing this a long time. They voted in many, many years worth of awards. But it's something Jodi always sends out this like very, kind of formal email to everyone as a reminder of what they're looking at, and also the responsibility that we all
absolutely
carry with us.
And I always tell them, I'm like, listen, guys, when we're voting on the best vehicles, these are the vehicles that you would feel confident recommending to your own friends and family.
Yeah.
Because if we said just pick your favorites, they would all be performance cars, right? Because auto journalists love performance cars. Yeah. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
And so this way, we want someone to recommend something that they'd feel confident recommending to their daughter or their mom.
Yeah.
So
just looking at a fairly obvious one, I think value, right? And that's a big one, not just because of things being so unobtainable and inaffordable these days. It's like, but value matters. The thing about value that I find so interesting is don't let, that section of the McDonald's menu, like, kind of cloud your vision. Value doesn't mean the cheapest.
No, it just means what you get for your money.
Exactly. Value is bang for your buck.
Yeah.
So we take a look at it, and, because there are some vehicles that are cheap, that doesn't necessarily equate to good value.
Yeah.
A Toyota RAV4 is a good example. It's not the cheapest crossover in that segment, but it's consistently good because it's reliable. You know what you're getting. It's going to last forever. It's spacious. It's practical, whatever. That's good value. For what you're paying for, you are getting good value out of that vehicle.
Yeah, absolutely. And just because a car is expensive, it doesn't mean that it's a free pass either. Like sometimes when cars are expensive, my expectations for it are even higher.
Yeah.
Because if you're asking that much more money, what are you offering in return, right?
Exactly. So value is a good one. And then innovation we look at, right? So and going back to it, this is a good example that when I drove the 2025 Forester, and I only mention it because we brought it up earlier, my instant thought was, kind of where's the innovation? How is this 2025 version raising the bar? There's still no hybrid powertrain.
Right.
That's a big problem. That's innovation for Subaru, right? I'm not talking about, of course, you've got the Hyundai Tucson, the Kia Sportage, the Ford Escape. There are so many hybrids in that segment, but it's like innovation can be something as simple as how are you innovating and evolving that product offering? And if you're not doing that, that's a knock against that particular vehicle, but innovation matters. GM rolling out Super Cruise. Mm-hmm. That was a big deal. Not only did that win one of our technology awards, 2 or 3 years ago, whenever it came out, but as that became available in especially mainstream vehicles,
because it trickled down,
exactly,
right?
That's a big innovation, and it can help to elevate and set one vehicle apart from the next.
Yeah, it's also because innovation is so important because we want to make sure that automakers are continuing to get better, and not just resting on their laurels and taking their success and just rolling with it. We really reward innovation. If someone's the first to do something and it happens to be really good, they get major points for that.
But now, jumping to another category here that we look at, safety, and I bring this one up because that's a good segue. The thing I've said to you before, and I had this discussion a few years ago with a PR person at an automaker. I had given a car that had a full advanced safety suite a 9.5 out of 10 because the systems were flawless. This car had won a Top Safety Pick Plus award from the IIHS, the international, what is it? The
IIHS.
The International Institute for Highway Safety. And a 5-star safety rating from NHTSA, which is the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration in the States. I gave it 9.5 out of 10. This PR person was like, what's it going to take to get that 10 out of 10? And I said, you will never see a 10 out of 10. And I've done this. Hopefully some of our contributors are listening. If you give a vehicle a 10 out of 10 on safety, I will knock it down to a 9.5 because If you are saying that it is a 10 out of 10, it means it cannot get any better, and that is impossible when it comes to safety.
Absolutely.
I will never let that happen.
Yeah, that's true. Like I give 10s on stuff like power or style all the time, but never on safety.
Never. You cannot.
Because there's always room for improvement.
Exactly. So that is a big one for us, and that goes to this innovation point, but then separately, we just look at that safety. When it comes to advanced safety features, are automakers skimping out? And look to Toyota and Honda for really, they've led the charge on this. The reason why you're seeing these advanced safety systems all the way up to adaptive cruise control included across the lineups of vehicles, not just in their lineup, is because Toyota and Honda did this. But a good example, the Dodge Hornet plug-in hybrid that I drove the other week, it was, $60,000 to start for the one I was driving. Still no adaptive cruise. It had blind spot monitoring, lane keep assist, forward collision warning, automatic emergency braking. The fact that Stellantis is still charging more, that you have to pay whatever it is, $3,500 for a package that includes adaptive cruise control, not okay. That is, yes, it is a driver convenience feature as much as a safety feature, but there is safety there.
Definitely,
Adaptive cruise control, because let's be honest, on some slog of a highway drive and you're not, totally in the zone, and the vehicle in front of you starts to slow down, it's nice to know that that vehicle is going to take that pressure off of you, and it's going to, have your back. It's a safety system. And the fact that Stellantis is not including that is a knock on both innovation and safety.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think when it comes to safety, I really hate it when automakers skimp out and they make you pay extra for features that really should be standard.
Yeah.
Like blind spot monitoring, I think is pretty standard these days.
So the one that's absolutely standard is forward collision warning.
Right.
Because that was something that the government mandated. You're also seeing a trickle down of traffic sign recognition. And the reason why is because that system is mandatory in Europe.
Wow, okay.
So automakers are now just rolling it out across the board. Why sell, a vehicle? This isn't the case for everyone. I'm not saying it's a universal truth, but you're seeing it more that, why sell a vehicle with traffic sign recognition in Europe and not in North America? It's much easier. Going back to the Hornet and the Alfa Romeo Tonale, people talk about, oh, wow, that's a real shout out to its Italian heritage that it has the aluminum paddle shifters on the steering wheel or on the steering column instead of the wheel. No, it's because it's cheap.
It's a parts bin thing.
It would be more expensive for Stellantis to go out of its way to develop a separate steering column cover, different paddle shifters on a different steering wheel, just make them all the same, right? And that's very much the case with this traffic sign recognition thing.
Yep.
Just sell it everywhere because it's cheaper than having to have separate programming.
Exactly.
So,
and it helps. So it's like, why not, right?
Exactly.
It's useful to everybody.
The reason why you see it in Europe, though, is because of, speed cameras and those crazy ones where it's like measuring your distance. Like, so point A to point B,
right.
If you're exceeding the speed limit, you'll get there faster than, so it'll take your photo and then it'll take your photo when you get to point B. And if you got there too quickly, you'll get a ticket. Insane. But that's why the limits are changing constantly, right?
Yeah.
So you have to give people a fair chance.
Yeah, I like these systems when they're in cars. I think they're very helpful.
What I don't like is adaptive cruise control systems that automatically adjust when the speed limit changes.
Yep.
And the reason why is a good example. North of Toronto or north of Brampton, if you take, so this is my little, intel and insight for you guys. When I do my evaluation drive of all the cars, I do the same route every time if I'm doing like my week-long test here at home. And part of my route is I take kind of this road that runs along the east side of Highway 410, and then I get on the 410 and just go north. And it goes from 100 kilometers an hour to 90 to 80. And then there's a section that drops to 60. And then there's another one that drops to 50. And then it goes up to 70. And it's nonstop the whole way.
Okay.
Now, I am all for, obeying the speed limit. But what I will do is when I see those speed limits change, so let's say that 80 to 70, right? I will cancel my cruise control adaptive or otherwise. I will cancel it. and coast down to that speed.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is these sign limit speed limit recognition systems, they see that and instantly apply the brakes to bring the vehicle to and it can be very jarring. So I don't love that, but I love at least the warning to say, hey, speed limit's changed, because that does happen. And sometimes if you'll
miss it.
Exactly. So that is a big one for me. But looking at some of the other stuff that we talk about, user friendliness is a huge one.
That's a big one to me. For me, like, you should be able to get into a car and be able to use it immediately, like without looking into the user manual or anything like that.
Now, I don't disagree with you, although I'm a huge advocate for brushing up on the owner's manual of the vehicle that you own.
It's helpful.
But I agree in the sense that you shouldn't have to sit down and, learn a whole new language in order to drive a vehicle.
Especially to do a simple task, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you get into a car and you literally don't know how to change a gear, that's a problem.
Or do you remember the, was it the BMW no, it was the Land Rover, and you were like, I can't figure out how to reset the trip meter.
Oh, yeah. I was like digging through the menus. I was doing all this stuff.
And it's on the end of the signal stock.
Which you would never see it.
No.
Because who looks over?
And then I don't even know what it stands for. I believe the little, or maybe this is on BMW, I think the little symbol on it says BC. I don't even know what that means.
Before Christ.
Yes. That's I think you might be right. Honestly though, it's
that's a really big one for me.
It's odd. It doesn't really make sense. No, not to dunk on the Hornet, but to go back to that, with those paddle shifters, it obstructs the ability to use the signal and wiper stalks because they're small and hidden behind these massive paddles.
And for me, user friendliness is also a safety issue too. Yeah. Because if you're distracted trying to find the button to do something, you're not looking at the road. That to me is a massive miss.
This is something that Jodi and I both agree on, and a lot of our contributors do too. Touchscreen integration for controls is becoming a huge problem. And I know, it is cheaper and easier, and in some ways beneficial even to the user, that an automaker can very easily, there could be a software update that could totally change the layout. A good example is Subaru. There was no shortcut for something. I don't remember when it launched the 11.6-inch tablet style touchscreen that integrated the climate controls and the infotainment. I think it was like a home button or something like that. And so Subaru did a software update and it added this home button.
That's nice.
That's something that you can do with a touchscreen that obviously you can't do with physical controls. But the big thing for us, muscle memory. You can, without looking, once you're even recent, it doesn't take long. Jodi and I do this every single week, and it's only after a few drives that you can kind of figure out which button is fan speed or whatever without taking your eyes off the road. You can't do that with the touchscreen. There's no way to be like, oh, I can tell by the fact that I've moved my finger 4 inches to the right and down 2 that I must be close to where the fan speed button is. It's like, no, but with physical buttons, you can kind of feel across and go, okay, 1, 2, 3, third button over, and hit it and adjust the fan speed.
Yeah, exactly. Especially because when you're driving, it only takes a second to look down and glance at the panel. But when you're driving, a second is a long time. Yeah. So much can go wrong in 1 second, right?
So that's why, that is just one example of why user friendliness matters so much and why we take it into account for these awards and why it, carries so much weight.
Absolutely. Performance is another one.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean like how fast a car is or how well it can corner. It's just how well the car performs at its intended task.
Yes. That's why, we talk a lot about this with scores. You might see an SUV, like a 3-row SUV that has, a driving feel or a power score on our regular, reviews. It might have like an 8 out of 10. Which might be the same as some sort of, this week you're driving the Genesis G70 sedan. I think this is the V6 version. And that might have an 8 out of 10 for you. And somebody might say, well, how could they be the same? One's a, kind of performance version of a little sports sedan and one of them's an SUV. But it's like, okay, but if the SUV is the Toyota Grand Highlander Hybrid Max and it's got 360 horsepower, that's more than ample. It feels like it can really haul. If you need to pass and merge and whatever, versus this G70, that power makes it peppy. When we got on the highway and you put your foot into it, it put me back in the seat. That felt like 8 out of 10 to me,
Yeah, and when we're giving these cars scores, we're not comparing them to cars that it doesn't compete with, because that doesn't make sense. Like, we're looking at where does it stack up amongst its competitors. That's what we're doing when we're giving it a score.
Okay, this is a big one that is a little bit, it sounds both specific and vague, but engineering excellence.
Sometimes you can just tell, right? Like, for me, when a car does everything it should do without me noticing it, if it's smooth, if it's like just runs in the background the way it should, if there's no hiccups, that's a good thing.
Cohesion
is so important when you're talking about, because you want it to feel like a car obviously is worked on by hundreds and hundreds of people.
Yeah.
But when they're on the same page, it really shows. Yeah. And that pushes it above and beyond what's normal.
I would use the example to show, what's not excellence in engineering. Call it whatever, 15 years ago, when Mercedes really started rolling out ignition stop start. So you guys know what this is. This is when you come to a stop and the engine of your vehicle shuts down to cut emissions and save a little bit of fuel. That's ignition stop start. The vehicles that the system was added to existing engines, so engines that were developed a few years earlier and were never intended to have this, this beefier starter motor system, it was very poorly integrated versus ones that were developed and had that integrated right into the engine's development. That's engineering excellence. The ones that it was added to after the fact, not so excellent, right? So that's what we look at. When something is just so smooth, so well-rounded, and you can tell that it was intended to work together, that is excellence in engineering.
And that's a major one. When it comes to cars, it's like, that's basically the core of everything. If the engineering is off, everything else also kind of falls apart, right? Obviously, tech and features is a big one. That has to do with innovation as well. Like, we want to make sure that the tech and features not only are there, but work the way they're supposed to work.
Can I go on a little tangerine here?
I love a good citrus.
I cannot believe that General Motors is going through with this whole ditching Apple CarPlay with its Google-based infotainment systems. And I just want to be clear. I know that, Tesla is an example of an automaker that doesn't have Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, and its owners, are so infatuated with Elon and the brand that they don't seem to care. But my thing is, GM, and I bring this up because of the Chevrolet Blazer EV and the Chevrolet Equinox EV, they have that whole Google built in, which is just a Google-based infotainment system. As part of the agreement of using that, General Motors has agreed to get rid of Apple CarPlay. And I'm sorry, but I looked into this, okay? Mm-hmm. About 60% of Canadians are iPhone users. I know that you can just use Bluetooth and have your messages and your phone calls. But for me, I look at it and go, well, everyone knows how, phone users are kind of loyalists, right? iPhone people are iPhone people, Android people are Android people. To alienate 60% of Canadians by saying you cannot have it, not to mention the fact that GM has offered Apple CarPlay, in fact, was one of the first automakers that I remember using Apple CarPlay at a mainstream level.
Yep.
To now get rid of that. And the bigger problem for me, because I'm an iPhone user, I use Apple Music and Apple Podcasts as my two platforms to access everything from my favorite bands to your favorite podcast, On the Road with AutoTrader. But my point is, without that integration, I cannot access that when I am on a road trip.
Right.
And I'm not going to handle my phone to play it through some Bluetooth audio thing.
That's a safety issue.
Exactly. So this means, because there's the weird beef with Google and Apple and whatever, I have to choose then to go to Spotify or Google Music or whatever. I'm not going to do that.
You're just not going to buy that car.
Exactly. So now I feel alienated, and this is one of those things. When we talk about tech and features, this is bad. This is bad, especially because I understand this new system is pretty good. Apple is better at a user interface. The reason Apple CarPlay is so good is because Apple knows what it's doing. It's why Google Maps is so good, right? And why automakers' infotainment systems and their integrated navigation systems suck.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why so many of them are going to these Google-based systems is because it's better.
Yeah, but I think there's a way that they could do both.
Yeah, you'd think so. And that's the thing. Okay, so part of the reason that this move is happening is because this new Google-based system isn't compatible with this new Apple CarPlay system, which is going to be a more holistic, like this Google-based one.
Right.
Apple is offering for free to automakers, hey, you can still use the old version of CarPlay if you want, and that still won't cost you anything. Just throw it in there. And GM went, no. It's like, guys, this is a step backwards.
Yeah, that truly is.
So when it comes to this award-winning thing, what makes an award-winning vehicle, when I look at that, when we're scoring later this year, something like a Blazer EV is going to be docked points specifically because of the elimination of Apple CarPlay.
Now it's missing something, and the alternative just isn't as good.
Yes.
So truly, it's going backwards.
The Dan tangent, otherwise known as the Dangent, is over.
Yeah, so in general, we're really just looking for vehicles that go above and beyond.
Yes.
We're celebrating excellence. We want vehicles to set a new standard. It has to be very well-rounded and cohesive. That's what it all boils down to, right? And I love our awards because I truly think they're so helpful.
Would you say that they are the most comprehensive in Canada?
Most trusted.
Wow.
And most influential.
Who knew? Me.
I knew.
I knew.
Before our Ask an Expert segment, here's a message from your friends at AutoTrader. Having trouble finding your perfect car at the perfect price? The answer is AutoTrader. Car prices are dropping across Canada, and AutoTrader has hundreds of thousands of new and used cars to choose from. Get a great deal on your perfect car by visiting AutoTrader today. Today's Ask an Expert comes from our friend Colin.
Shep.
It's Shep.
Shout out our friend Colin Shepard. Good guy.
With so many people using their phones while driving, the fines have continued to increase. The current fine is between $615 and $1,000 for distracted driving. Do you think this is enough, or should it increase?
I think it needs to change tact. I don't think the financial penalties are...
The current way is clearly not working because so many people are still using their phones. I think it's because it's hard to actually enforce it.
Yeah, it's really... and it's annoying, right? And we all feel this way. It's like you see somebody on their phone making, just in general, it bothers me. But especially when somebody is doing something like very dumb and dangerous that you're like, man, where's the cop when you need them? And that doesn't necessarily mean a ticket for that person. Sometimes it's like enforcement through education, right?
Right.
But yeah, you see people on their phones constantly.
I mean, people know it's bad.
Yeah. And people know that they're risking a fine, but don't seem to care. So I don't know what the solution is, but something's got to change. I don't know if it needs to be, a demerit-based system, and put people's licenses
like a license
at risk.
Suspension?
Yeah.
So just like it has to be more drastic. The penalty has to be more drastic.
Yeah. Or somehow enforce it, or somehow, I don't know how you would do it, right? But find a way to restrict access to phones in cars.
People would lose it over that.
And I don't know how it would be possible. It's just because distracted driving is such a huge, factor in collisions.
I mean, it's literally killing people. That's why I don't understand why it is so difficult to get people just to stop.
I think I've ranted about this before, but what drives me nuts, and obviously it's okay, I know that maybe their vehicle is having issues or whatever, but I know vehicles because this is what we do for a living. I hate when I see somebody driving a vehicle that I know for a fact has Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and at the very least Bluetooth.
Yeah.
And still some moron is holding their phone up. That's the other one we've talked about before. It's hands-free and people go, what if I just have it on speakerphone? And it's like, no, you idiot. Like that's clearly, that's not hands-free.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Shep. I don't know if the fine increase would do much because that is a lot of money. But I saw the same thing when I lived and worked in Alberta. I was at the newspaper when at the time, and I think it still is, Canada's most comprehensive distracted driving laws were put into effect. Within a year, the fines increased because, and at that time, the oil and gas industry was thriving and the government literally said, oh, the monetary penalties aren't working. It's not enough money because people are making too much money that they're flaunting it. But they just go, what's $2,000 to me, man?
Nothing.
So Alberta added demerits. Now, I don't know if incidents of distracted driving have decreased as a result, but I know that that's what happened in Alberta, and maybe we need to explore that
I'd be
in
curious
other
to
parts
see
of
what
Canada.
the results of that were. I mean, it works for other things, right? For other offenses.
Yeah.
So maybe it'll work for this?
Maybe. Be sweet if it did.
Maybe.
I don't know.
It's the policing of it that's hard, I think, to because it's like a one-on-one. Like, there's no machine that can do that.
No, that's why you see cops on motorcycles or even on foot. You'll see them looking into windows when cars are stopped at, traffic lights and whatnot. But otherwise, and people are sneaky about it, obviously, right? But if I'm sorry, man, your crotch isn't that interesting. Like if you're staring down at your crotch for that long, either you're on your phone or you need to see a doctor.
But I mean, I even saw one guy, he wasn't holding his phone, it was in a mount, but he was scrolling through TikTok.
Oh yeah, I remember you told me that.
And I was like, is that a loophole? Like technically, it feels unsafe, but is it a loophole? Like, would he get a ticket for that if a cop saw him?
Absolutely.
Then he should, yeah.
So I don't know.
What a jerk. Anyway, thank you, Colin, for your question. If any of you would like to ask Dan or I your question, you can email expert@trader.ca. But that wraps up this episode. Thank you so much for joining us.
Wait, before we go, can I ask?
Of course.
I'm just a little bit taken aback by this. He didn't call in. He emailed in.
So his new name should be
This is emailed in. This is mail-in Shepherd, not call-in Shepherd.
He doesn't even go here.
All right. On that note, we'll see you guys next time. Drive safe and
we'll see you next time. That's usually how I sign off.
Okay. Well, sorry I messed that up.
Womp womp.
Womp womp.
Thanks, everybody.